She has been acknowledged by several different presidents. She took a role in the women's suffrage movement. She received international fame. She received the Alumni Achievement Award from Radcliffe College. And she was awarded the Presidential Medal of Freedom. She overcame her encounters with social discrimination to become one of the most influential figures in the world because of her ability to succeed despite her disabilities and her stoop-flying exploration of human rights through education. Helen Keller was born on June 27, 1880, in Tuscany, Alabama, to Arthur Keller, a former captain in the Confederate Army, and Kate Adams Keller, a descendant from a wealthy English family. As a child, Keller was spoiled and very loved by her parents, but by the age of 2 years old, she became permanently deaf and blind due to an unknown illness that might have been scarlet fever. Her illness caused her to be wild and unruly as a child. Many people didn't think she would ever amount to be something great because of her behavior problems and because of her disabilities. During the 1800s, people with disabilities were often cast aside and forgotten because they were useless to society. Helen's parents didn't want a life of disappointment for their daughter, so they took her to Alexander Graham Bell, who told Helen to contact the Perkins Institution for the Blind in Boston, now known as the Perkins School for the Blind in Massachusetts. At the age of 7, Helen was given a teacher named Anne Sullivan, who moved into the Keller home to help Helen learn to overcome her disability. Helen had no formal way of communication until the age of 7. She had created simple hand gestures with her parents, but they were no use to anyone that hadn't known Keller for a long time. At first, Anne struggled to teach Helen, until one day, something clicked, and Anne had an idea to go out to the family's water pump. And while Helen felt the water running in one hand, Anne spelled out W-A-T-E-R in her other hand. This was the ta-da moment that led to the beginning of a new life of communication for Helen. Anne Sullivan used the manual alphabet to connect words with objects. Within 3 years, Helen knew the whole manual alphabet, and she had learned to read and write in Braille. However, for Helen, this was not enough. After observing that normal people did not communicate with their hands, she wanted to learn to speak with her mouth. By positioning her hand properly on a face, Helen could feel the vibrations of the different letters. Eventually, Helen learned to communicate with her own voice. Despite being told that she would never be successful, she overcame her disability and was ready to take on the world with her newfound way of communication. Keller took classes at the Perkins Institution and showed remarkable progress in English literature. Her letters and journal entries gained wide circulation with the help of Anonymous and Bell, who were both fond of Keller's accomplishments and of her story. However, at the age of 10, Keller wrote and published a story titled The Frost King that caused controversy because of its similarity to another story that had been published in the 1870s. The incident caused Keller to leave Perkins. After that, she attended the Wright Humason School in New York to improve her lip reading and speaking skills. She then attended the Cambridge School for Young Ladies, which was a preparatory school to prepare her for college. Helen attended Radcliffe College from 1900 to 1904. After having all the lessons manually worded into her hand by Anne, she became the first deaf-blind person to graduate. In college, Helen read a lot about society and philosophy. She drew an immediate interest to the study of people with disabilities. She noticed that they were often neglected in society and in the work field. Her desire to bring justice to all people led her to write and speak in favor of the Socialist Party. Helen's optimism and courage helped guide her to be successful as a social activist, but her investigation of blindness led her into the industrial world of activism. After a period of depression, Keller came to the conclusion that the problem with the industrial world wasn't necessarily the horrible conditions, but the fact that humanity had advanced so far in spite of them. She wanted to fight to change things. She took up the cause of workers' rights and used her fame to make a stand. Helen also advocated for the right to women to vote, known as the women's suffrage movement, and she was a member of the American Civil Liberties Union. Keller also fundraised for the American Foundation for the Blind. She established the Helen Keller Endowment Fund by gaining donations from wealthy patrons. She used this money to help people overseas who were blind and to help people with disabilities in underdeveloped countries. She also worked with blind soldiers during World War II. By being a part of the political world, Helen was able to explore and evaluate the human integrity of herself and of others. After exiting the political world, she continued to spread her opinions and beliefs. Helen Keller spent her whole life writing. However, in college and during her period of heavy interest in politics, her writing interest had peaked. She wrote many poems and books that portrayed her opinions on education, social activism, and her life in general. The way that she worded her sentences expressed an idea of hope and encouragement. People enjoyed reading and listening to Helen Keller because no matter what she was talking about, she was always influencing people's lives for the better. Keller continued to write for enjoyment, and she continued to travel and influence people by telling her story of encountering discrimination and overcoming her disability. She expressed the importance of exploring education and using it to impact the world. In 1936, Anne Sullivan died, and Keller was given a new companion named Polly Thompson, who helped Keller continue to spread her word. In 1960, Keller suffered from a stroke and lived peacefully in Connecticut until her death on June 1, 1968. Throughout her whole life, Helen Keller encountered social hindrance, but she was able to overcome it by being so optimistic. Her life story is the best representation of all of the encounters that she faced and the explorations that she went on to leave such an impact on the world.